So today, I wanted to look into a little bit more. We've been talking about how to do marketing on social media. We've been looking at how you can use other types of donations other than cash donations in some of the previous sessions. Today, I'd like to go in a little bit more to how we take all of those efforts that we have in terms of fundraising and gaining recognition, getting people involved and engaged, and being able to thank those people and appreciate those people in a really very meaningful way today. So like I said, throughout this, please feel free to type questions in the chat, write where you are coming from, what institution you're from, anything you'd like in the chat just to connect with people. I'll be sharing a few slides as we go through, and I'm also going to, at the end, open this up to Diane Calling, who's with us today from UPMC. So Diane, can you quickly introduce yourself for everyone and what your role is at UPMC?
Sure. I'm the volunteer director, guest services director, pastoral care director for Pasvent and St. Margaret's. I oversee, before COVID, about 750 volunteers and the onboarding, the whole part that goes with that, recognition, managing them. I've been at the hospital for 42 years at Pasvent doing a variety of things. I've been the volunteer director for the last probably 22.
Fabulous. Thank you, Diane. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing some slides, and we will talk to Diane a little bit more because she's been doing some really great work at Pasvent and just throughout been a great support for me as I've been pulling this whole thing together. My name is Carolyn Keller. Like I said, I'm with Curio 412. We are a consultancy for nonprofits and small businesses who really want to be able to engage their teams, attract recognition of what they're doing, and make a big impact. And as we've been working through this difficult time, we are really digging into what we can do to help nonprofits, and appreciating volunteers and donors is one of those things that really does make a difference. I know many people who have struggled with keeping volunteers or having donors that reoccur. When we started asking questions about donors in our previous sessions about fundraising, we found out that a lot of the people who have been supported by these sessions have volunteers and donors that maybe come once or that will donate once, and trying to find ways to really appreciate those people so that on the volunteer side, you have very satisfied, valued volunteers who want and care about your mission. And then on the donor side, to have donors that love your mission so that they'll keep coming back, keep donating, keep supporting your causes. I'd like in the chat right now for you guys to put something for me just to get us started. Over the last 6 months, we've all experienced a lot of challenges, but I'd like to know, what are you most thankful for in how your organization has been doing throughout the last 6 months? So go ahead and stick those thoughts about your organizations right in the chat. And believe the chat should be on the bottom bar. If you can't find it, let us know. We'll get you in there. I love that, Bob. Support and passion. And adaptability too, and ensuring that you can still operate. I've seen a lot of adaptability, and I think I've heard the word pivoting more this year than than I ever have. That's great. I think there's been a lot of challenges, but there's also been a lot to be thankful for. So I'm glad to see some of you sharing those things, and you can continue to stick those in the chat. I know that many of you have come to these sessions before, so you know me a little bit, but I wanted to just reintroduce myself since I know we have a few new faces here. I'm a purpose-driven consultant, and I've been featured as one of Pittsburgh's 30 Under 30, but I've also been serving nonprofits for nearly a decade. Service is really a part of who I am and how I choose to operate within the consulting sphere, and I'm a chronic volunteer. So I've been involved on a number of different boards and committees, and everything that you do in your daily lives, I've probably done at some point just through volunteer efforts. So I understand when you are working in a nonprofit, you're wearing very many hats, and there's often opportunities that will present themselves that you're going to be very excited about, and you have that go-getting and going to get it done attitude, but that can also be really challenging and exhausting sometimes too. When I was putting this together, I was thinking about exactly what we wanted to talk about today, and I want to help you show your gratitude in order to help build deeper relationships. So there's a lot of different things we could talk about in a session about appreciating volunteers and donors, but we're going to focus on that growing gratitude in order to build those deeper relationships. So first thing I'd like to take a look at are some of the ways we had asked, how do you say thank you? I know that we had also asked in registration how your volunteers have been interacting with you. And thankfully, it seems like a lot of your volunteers have either been able to continue their work remotely in terms of volunteering or on site in a safe manner. But I know there are a lot of us here who have volunteers that haven't been able to really engage with us much at all. And so in a lot of different ways, we're thinking about the volunteers who are on site. We're thinking about volunteers who have been helping us from home. And we've been thinking about even those volunteers that can't be with us in volunteering, how we say thanks to them. And so there's a few ways in which you might already thank volunteers and donors. Many of you, as you can see, send thank you letters or host appreciation events, which have gone largely on the virtual sphere this year. There's phone calls, gifts, newsletters, sort of that public appreciation. And I've even seen, like I said, things like Zoom happy hours and social media of those targeted ways to kind of show that appreciation a little bit more broadly. So as we're thinking about how you say thank you to volunteers, we could talk about how to write the best letter. We could talk about how to throw the best event, and we could talk about the best thing to say to make people feel appreciated. But as I was pulling this together, I honestly didn't think that any of that would help you very much. I think you can write the best letter ever, but if you're not pairing it with strategic ways of thinking about how you're going to appreciate volunteers, that letter is going to do a lot, but it also needs to have that extra context with it too. So to get us started off, I know that many of you are writing those things that you felt most thankful for. Think about a time that you volunteered or a time that you felt most appreciated. And I just want you to put that in the chat in maybe 1 or 2 sentences and describe a time that you felt that you were the most valued, either in your organization or something you volunteered for. Ooh, surprised with a gift card. That's always fun. Oh, I love that, Diane, when you could tie your volunteer work directly to the people you served. Yeah, being able to know that you made that difference and have that impact. Oh, and Bob, when your work was acknowledged and appreciated, I know Bob is a integral part of why a lot of you are here right now from the Heinz History Center Affiliates Program, and his work through this challenging time has been essential. Positive feedback, meeting and greeting with higher ups at Thanksgiving, or thanking us, higher ups thanking us, that's great too. And those are all important parts. So as you're reflecting on that, the place that I always start in terms of thinking about volunteers or donors, one way or the other, is that we always start with why. Is your organization has value to the people who come and interact with you for a number of different reasons. And by starting from why that person is there, you can really understand how that person is going to feel best appreciated. So if you have, say, someone like a volunteer, maybe they have a tie to your cause and it's very personal to them. Maybe they're volunteering because they're trying to build their career skills and they'd like to put something on their resume and they want to really get the experience that they need in order to advance in a career outside of that volunteer work. Sometimes it's just a community thing where you're getting together and they want to meet like-minded people, build positive relationships. And a lot of times people just want to give back too. They have, we all give through our energy and our time and our money. And that form of giving is really important to understand when you're thinking about your volunteers. On a donor side of things, they may also have a personal tie to your cause and organization, and that is a reason for them wanting to give. They also may want to see that impact that they have and be part of a change, be part of something that's larger than themselves. And as they're able to donate and see that, that's something that's going to empower them. Maybe they're donating for tax benefits. I know some people do have a very tax-minded brain, although most of the time I do see people just giving back because they want to donate to that cause and they have that personal connection. So knowing that these are the types of reasons that are going to motivate your donors and your volunteers are what's going to help you to write that best letter or to throw that best event or to have some way that's going to directly target the reason that your volunteer is there or the reason that your donors are donating. And by making that personal connection with their motivation and their connection with your values, that is really what's going to encourage them to engage a little bit more with your organization and continue to volunteer and be very fulfilled by that volunteer work, or continue to donate and come back to a cause that they have felt like they've really made a contribution to. So as you're thinking about that, think about what that value is to each type of person within your organization. I'm sure you can think of a number of different people, whether they're donors or volunteers. And as you're pulling those people out, really think about them on an individual level almost. Is between your volunteers and donors, you may have people who are there for different reasons. If you have a number of volunteers that are in a retirement age bracket and they are really there to volunteer because they want the interaction, because they connect with your cause, because they want to give back, that's going to be a different bracket of volunteers than, say, a younger group of volunteers that's looking to gain career experience. They're getting a different value out of your organization as a volunteer. And same thing with your donors. Your donors are going to come from different demographics. So thinking about really what that value is really going to go a long way in thinking about those appreciation efforts that you have, whether that is something like a card or an event or a personal call. All of those are really going to help to understand the person better that you're looking to appreciate. I'd like you to just write yes or no. Have you ever left an organization because you didn't feel connected or valued to it? Yep, I'm seeing a lot of yeses come in. And I think every time, because I have definitely been in that position before also, where you don't feel connected to that organization and you don't feel valued at that organization. And you always know the reason why you left. And maybe there's certain feelings that you have associated with that. But that brings me to why you say thank you in the first place, is that saying thank you is probably the simplest and easiest way that you can acknowledge that that person has value in your organization. And when you look at places like the independent sector, they value volunteer time at $25.43 per hour. So those volunteers that you have are very valuable to you. And then the donors that you have are bringing their contributions as well, which also brings that value to your organization. So why to say thank you is because that value is provided to your organization. And that simple way that you can acknowledge that person's contribution and value is going to help you to retain volunteers and donors. It's going to provide fulfillment for your volunteers and your donors. And this is where knowing what your volunteers get out of that investment in your organization. I know that as nonprofits, we don't tend to think of the people who come to us as our customers, but I think that it's a good analysis or a way to take a look at your volunteers and donors, is that your volunteers and donors are investing something in you. They're either investing their time, they're investing their energy, they're investing their money. And that is going towards something. So when you're a consumer of something, whether that's a product or a service, you already know that that product or service has value for you. And as a volunteer or a donor, you are also ready to invest in a value of either a product or service. Your organization is producing a product or service that that person really connects to. So being able to know what your volunteers are motivated by, know what they value and get out of your organization, and then being able to pull that into simple ways to say thank you. And as I said a little bit earlier, each volunteer and each donor is going to have a different reason. And so understanding that you will have different segments of people will allow you to get personal with these people. And you probably have volunteers and donors that you know very closely. You might have volunteers and donors that you don't know very well at all. So taking a look at each of those different motivations and understanding that volunteers and donors are each providing you with something that are unique. It's not just that your volunteer or donor is providing you with a contribution. If you're talking about a donor, they may write your organization a check, but what you do with that check is what you have been empowered to do by that person. And so showing them and telling them how they make a difference is going to be the biggest factor in letting that person know their value at your organization, because at the point that they're already volunteering or donating, they've already decided to invest in you. Thinking about this strategically, like I started with, I could talk about how to write the perfect letter or throw the perfect event, but that might not miss, or that might miss the mark for what we're trying to address when we talk about volunteer appreciation. And I heard someone say recently that they have at least 3 touch points when it comes to volunteering. And I think about this in 3 different categories. So touch points can be a number of times. How many times are your volunteers told thank you? And then thinking about not only the number of times, but who says that? Is it the volunteer coordinator? Is it a board member? Is it the executive director at your institution? Is it by other volunteers or other people who they interact with? So thinking about not only how many times do they hear it, but who is saying it to them too? Because if you have one person who is really great at volunteer appreciation, but say that volunteer works with someone else or under someone else who never says thank you to them or never appreciates them, they'll feel a connection with one, but they may not get that full satisfaction of fulfilling work that they have there. And I'm sure that many of you have said you have left organizations because you haven't felt valued. It's never the job of just one person at your institution to say thank you to your volunteers and donors. And then what does it look like? So I'm sure you'll send your thank you letters, you'll send a number of different things. So thinking about what those thank yous look like. Maybe you'll have one letter that addresses the majority needs of a donor, and that will be sent out as your end of year thank you for your contributions, having an impact report of what you've done with those contributions. But then maybe there's a second touch point that is a phone call from one of your board members. And then maybe when that person comes in to your institution, whatever you may do, then that person gets another personal contact and another personal point of thank you. So really considering where this is. And this shouldn't be something that ends up being overwhelming. I think when you pull all of these different items together, thinking about multiple touch points actually makes it easier for you to strategize and figure out how do we streamline what we're doing. So how do we ensure that, say, our volunteers are getting thanked multiple times? And that is a way of pulling your staff, whether it's volunteer or paid staff, around a plan of how to do this, making sure that your whole team is on board. And that can also include your board members as well, as making sure your board members know. I know many nonprofits this year who have taken their donor lists and said, here's a list of maybe 20 donors. They have 10 people on their board, and they say each board member is going to call 2 people. And so that way your donors or volunteers are getting a very close and personal conversation. And it's not as much of a burden on one person at your organization. It's something that you're collectively doing to help streamline and save some time as you're pulling those things together. So if you'd like to talk a little bit more about this, I'm always available, but I'd like to introduce Diane now because we had some great conversations about how she's been able to do some volunteer appreciation at UPMC. And her program is a pretty fabulous program. They do a number of different things. Well, I know, Diane, you do a number of different things, but my mom is personally involved with them and plays piano in their lobby. She hasn't been able to do that for the past 8 months, but a couple weeks ago, Diane actually came to her door with a gift bag, and my mom almost cried. She called me and told me about it. And Diane has been telling me a little bit more about that effort, but I wanted her to be able to speak to everyone to just give you some ideas of what this looks like in practice. Diane's been really great. So Diane.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, I want to say that people think because I'm part of a big health system, I have this unlimited budget, and I don't. I have like no budget. So we do one recognition luncheon a year, and one size doesn't fit all. So while that's a nice thing, and our president gets up and speaks, and everybody, you know, the seem to appreciate it, it isn't really the thing that they remember the most. I don't think it's a thing they remember the most. When you talk about having departments say thank you, or having, you know, people in your organization say thank you, I've had a lot of executives tell me when they volunteer here, my gosh, nobody ever thanked me in the last 40 years of my career. And I came here and like 3 people today told me thank you. Like I feel very much valued, you know, and I think it has to be looking in them in the eye and saying thank you, not just waving on their way at the door. Thank you. You know, it's sort of like the Miss America wave. So we do a newsletter, which is one of the things that you suggested to keep in touch with people, and we do. And I decided that I wanted them to know that we cared about them when they were gone. So the first newsletter after COVID, and I don't even think I told you this, the first newsletter after COVID, I asked them to send me a picture of what they were doing during their isolation. So all these volunteers sent me pictures, and I put them out on we have a Yammer site, like a Facebook site for the hospital. And I posted them out there for the departments to see what their volunteers were doing. And then the next month I asked them, because so many of them told me or sent pictures of them reading, if they wanted to give me a suggested reading list. And we put together a reading recommendation list that we shared with all the other volunteers. So they were kind of going back and forth and borrowing books to each other, which was kind of nice too. So enough time has passed now that we recognize that there are going to be people in our organization that are not going to be able to come back. And it's hard for me to send a newsletter every month with the same message. No news, no news. You can't come, you can't come. You know, it's been kind of depressing. So I decided to take a page from the Pittsburgh Penguins, who honor their season ticket holders by hand delivering their season tickets every year. Sidney Crosby does it. The other players do it. So I thought we could maybe do this in a small way. So at this hospital, we have about 400 volunteers at Passavant. So I bought these cheap little bags. They cost me $1.80 a piece. They're kind of cheesy. Actually, it looks worse than I thought it would when I ordered them, but they're nice for your car, like to stick in your car and put stuff in there. It doesn't fall on the floor. And I typed a little note that just says that Cindy and I were thinking about them and thought maybe they could use this little bag, and we put it inside. And then I contacted all the departments in the hospital who use volunteers and told them that I was going to send them a thank you note with the volunteer's name and address on it and these bags. And it was my hope that they would hand deliver them to the volunteers in their department. Because if they really missed them, like they said they did, because everyone was calling me, we miss our volunteers, that they should be able to go out and see their volunteers. Because they would say to me, oh my gosh, I haven't seen Ellen. How's she doing? And I thought this is a great way for you to tell me how Ellen's doing. So I took the volunteers that aren't assigned to a department outside of mine. I did all of our Eucharistic ministers and the musicians and the pet therapy volunteers and any department that wasn't able to do it. And I did those. I decided I was going to bake a little bag of cookies. So I just put 6 cookies in a bag. I'm homemade different kinds every week. And I would do 5 a day because I could do that before it started getting too creepy for me to show up on someone's doorstep. So I just divided my list up by zip code, and I just GPSed myself, and I just ran around and saw people. And I think I did have people cry when they saw me, which I thought was amazing that they cried when they saw me, because I thought I'm not that exciting. But I did have people cry. And I have to tell you that we probably got handwritten thank you notes from 1/3 of the people that either I visited or one of our departments visited. Had a couple of volunteers post on the UPMC Facebook page that they felt very honored that somebody had taken the time to visit them. So it's been very, very positive and very, very personal. And for me, it's been wonderful. I miss them just as much as they miss us. And it was great to just touch base with them and see how they were doing. It's been a really good project. Whoops, I can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Thank you, Diane.
Yeah.
Just get myself off of mute. I'm going to stop our recording now and want to open it up for Q&A for both myself and Diane. And I'd love to hear some of the things that have been going on at your own institutions as well. So we're going to stop that recording now so that if you'd like to share that first half with anyone, you're more than welcome to.